community partnerships group leaders, and also our sustainable environment and waste team. I'll hand over to Todd to do the introductions and to kick it all off. Thanks, Todd.
Thanks, Mark. Good evening, all. Hopefully you can hear me okay, but we're going to start off with Max Compton, our Group Leader of Community Partnerships tonight, who you're all probably already familiar with, but Max is going to go through her slides on her service area and break down all the different functions. So Max, if you've got your presentation there, are you able to share the screen?
Yeah.
So, councillors, just for your information too, Ashley is an apology. He's in the air on the way to Sydney. He's got a consultation with the state government tomorrow on the Roads Act, and so he won't be attending tonight.
There we go.
Okay.
Lovely, thanks, Max. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Oops, I just can't see everyone for some reason. It's put everything over my screen, so I can't see you. So if you have questions, please ask as we go. I guess this presentation this evening is really just to share a bit about the community partnerships portfolio. I'm sure many of you are aware of most things that we do. Hopefully there's a few little surprises along the way too, or good surprises. But I think it's a great opportunity to really outline what we do, who we are, where we sit within the organisation, some of the real key activities that we undertake as a team. So on that note, we'll quickly just go through where we fit in the organisation, again, what we do, who we are, and we'll touch on some of the key projects as well that's currently underway. And as I said, if you've got any questions, please let me know. So where we fit within the organisation, obviously General Manager is Mark, and then Todd is the Deputy General Manager for Corporate and Community. And as you can see there, Community Partnerships is one of 4 portfolios that sit with under Todd. In terms of the community partnership structure itself, obviously that's me as the group leader, and then under me is 5 direct reports which cover the various portfolios. So Community Partnerships Coordinator, that's Micah Veenkamp. I think most of you have met and had conversations with Micah previously. So she focuses on economic development, tourism and community. And she actually oversees a community team. And as you can see there, we have the Community Planning Officer, Development Officer, and the Visitor Experience Officer. And I'll talk to some of these as we go through the presentation as well. Customer and Business Services also sits within my portfolio. And there's currently a team of 4.8 plus the team leader at the moment. The Shire Librarian, who also has part-time positions and a casual workforce that help to manage and operate our library services. Phil, as most of you know, is the Mem Hall Venue Coordinator, and we also have the Dorrigo Support Centre, and that's Alex's role as coordinator for the DSC. And under Alex, she's got a part-time support officer, and also based on the current business model, there's 16 contractors that currently work with Alex. So overall, we have about 30 staff plus 16 contractors that sit within the community partnerships structure. So some of the things that we work through, and this predominantly sits with me, is the leases and licenses. So I don't look after any commercial leasing, with the exception of the Yeronga Visitor Centre. So most of these are community focused and community based organisations, agencies or services. So under the list we can see NCOBs, so Neighbourhood Centres of the Bellingen Shire, and that contract is for youth services, now predominantly supporting the Bellingen Youth Hub, but depending on what's required and what is seen as value under that contract is the decision of NCOBs to use that accordingly. The Wine New South Wales, so our swimming pools, so just on swimming pools, and also our lifeguard services as well. So those tenders finish this season. So we will be going to tender again for both of those services, which will be a great process to go through. and certainly seen some challenges this year, but fingers crossed that we get some good options moving forward. Again, leases, they're mostly related to our community facilities, so North Bank Community Garden, our surf clubs. The interesting thing with our surf clubs in particular is because that sits on Crown land and council as a Crown land manager, we actually have to enter into a Crown land lease, but that lease is something that we administer. So not always straightforward, but certainly something that we're fortunate to have our property officer work with us because of the nature of the Crown lands involvement. But that one's moving forward. We're hoping to finalise new leases with the surf clubs actually in the coming weeks. So fingers crossed.
Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor O'Keefe.
Sorry to interrupt Maxine. So with the swimming pools, how long did the Y have the contract, and what happened before the Y had a contract?
Sure. So the contract that's currently been in place for the Y, the initial contract was for 5 years, and then they had an extension of another 5 years. So all up, the Y has had that contract for the last 10 years. Prior to that, it's my understanding that it was a private operator that ran the pools previously, and there were some staff that were part of that private operation that actually came into the Y as well once the Y took over the contract. So that's been a long-term contract arrangement with the Y New South Wales, and we'll see, I guess, what happens when we put the tender out next time as to who those
councillors, the contract finishes at the end of this season, and so we will be going out for tender very shortly to see what the market has for the operation of the pools.
Yep. Yep. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
No worries. So the other thing to note in relation to our, I guess, contracts and agreements is the Clarence Regional Library. So we have an existing agreement with Grafton Council or CBC, which is predominantly covering our shire and also the Clarence Valley Shire. So that contract has been in place for 3 years now and will end in June 2026. And that was an agreement that was prior to my time taking over that portfolio. And so we will we're starting to go through a bit of a review process at the moment just to ascertain what any future agreements look like or what might be an opportunity moving forward for our library services, and whether that's with or without under that agreement or not under that agreement. So, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Max. So if there were other councils, neighbouring councils that were interested in trying to forge some sort of partnership with the library services, would we have to wait till the end of that existing contract, do you think, or is it something that can be dealt with before that?
Under the terms of the agreement, we need to provide 12 months notice to relinquish, I guess, our agreement with them. And so we can pretty much do that at any stage, but I don't foresee that would create any issues with us undertaking conversations with other council areas and other library services.
So
and I think
there
that's
also
something.
would be the opportunity, Max, wouldn't there, for other councils to also join the Clarence Regional Library too, possibly?
Yeah, that's actually what I was meaning. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. So under past agreements, and I'm talking quite a few years ago now, Coffs and Nambucca were part of that agreement. They both haven't been part of that agreement for at least one agreement term, if not two. But yeah, certainly that's something that we can consider moving forward. So whether we bring in other council areas or whether we, step away and potentially look at maybe moving from Clarence if we don't believe that that's the best option for us, and potentially look at Nambucca or Coffs. It's certainly up to us to make that assessment as we go through a bit of a review on what that looks like and what's the best option, I guess, based on the services that we deliver and are they like for like and things like that.
Thanks.
And I've just noted on the side just some of the key stakeholders at a regional and state level that we work with as part of the whole sort of community partnerships portfolio. I'm sure there's nothing that's not really familiar there to anyone. It's really our destination partners, our regional and state partners, in particular Crown Lands, DPI, Regional New South Wales. We also work with Arts Mid North Coast, Department of Health and Ageing. They're a key stakeholder for us at the moment with the aged care reforms that are currently happening and some changes in the funding models and things like that. But we'll talk to that when we go through the Dorrigo Support Centre. And I guess, of course, our local stakeholders being Chambers, Business and Community.
When I was at the Urunga Chamber, Maxine, you and your team were just so fantastic, both to deal with and the services, the responsiveness you provided to the community was just fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass that on to the team.
Please do.
Thank you. So as we move into the economic development and tourism component of our portfolio. So as I mentioned, most people are fairly familiar with Micah these days, and the other person who may or may not have had much engagement with today is Lee Hookway. So she's our Visitor Experience Officer, and a key focus for her is coordinating the Visitor Information Centre, particularly the Waterfall Way site, but also support both the Dorrigo Tourist Association, which is a non-council visitor centre, but also the Urunga Vic as well with the trike guys that are currently in there. I should actually mention too that the trike guys have actually tendered their notice to say that they won't be continuing with their lease, and that will be finalised at the end of this month as well. So the process from there will be looking to put out another expression of interest, because there are, I believe, some interested parties that would be keen on potentially looking at as an opportunity for them to be there, and certainly go through that process as well. So just in terms of the economic and business development, we've really put a focus on our business engagement over the last sort of 12 to 18 months. And this is a really good news story, I think. So we currently have 321 businesses that we connect with through the monthly newsletter. It was probably about 120 maybe 12 months ago. So we've done a lot of work and a lot of engagement with our business community. I think you're all aware as well that we redeveloped the tourism website and launched that last year. We actually have 127 local businesses who have developed an ATDW profile and are now listed on our tourism website. And that, again, is a really, really good news story. I think we had 90, I think, only about a month ago. And so, again, we've been really, really pushing hard to get those additional businesses up onto the site. We've also increased our event engagement too. So we've particularly worked with our chambers of recent times and some other event organisations in supporting them. The Open Streets program is a classic example of that. But we've also been liaising with different festival organisers. So Taranto Festival is another example of how we've kind of been working with those as well. So that's been a really positive thing as well. And obviously supporting our business community through information and collaboration opportunities. Besides that, it's the usual kind of stuff when it comes to economic development and tourism. So socials, website, filming, advertising, promotion, those types of things. One of the really good things we've been focusing on as well in the last 12 months is our visitor centre refresh. Lee has been amazing in working through that process to really consider the space and set that out in a really inclusive way. We've been looking at our product and trying to bring the whole local factor back into the Vic. And I'm pleased to say we're sitting at about 85% or a bit higher of local product in the Visitor Information Centre at the moment. So that's a really good story about how we're supporting local business. Mr. Mayor?
Max, do you, I'm sure you do, but I wonder if councillors could be provided with some sort of report on the visitation numbers that go through the VICs, both in Bellingen and in Dorrigo, I guess in Urunga too, although I know that hasn't really been operating so much with that focus. But I think that'd be really useful for us to have an idea of the number of visitors and where they're coming from, etc.
Yeah, we can certainly do that, no problem. They do have counters, so we can look to access that information and provide that.
Yeah, and just while I've got the microphone open, if particular businesses would like to try and speak to council about using our logo, I know it's on the website, but you know, not everyone goes there. How are they best to do that? To contact you or Micah in the first instance?
Yeah, so there's two options. So they can either contact Micah or myself directly, or there is a form on the website where they can request access to the branding, also photos as well, our photo library and other branding assets to support that. We have worked with a bunch of businesses and also community groups who've accessed the branding as well. So Ziggy's Wild Foods is a classic example of that. And I know that they used our branding, the destination branding, when they went to the fine food festivals over the last 2 years. And they're really trying to incorporate into that as well. And I guess
the preference on that would certainly be to use the form on the internet in the first instance to stop the to and fro, because it's got all the questions that are on it, and it saves, I guess, having to go back and forth, because all the information that's requested is there. So that would be certainly the preference in the first instance.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. So just again on the visitor information centres and the refresh, we've also done a lot of work with our branding to redo a lot of the pamphlets and brochures and maps and things like that, to both incorporate the branding but also talk about those sustainability messages that sit behind that as well, which is a really good thing. The mayoral forums have been really successful. We also sent out a survey or a bit of a feedback form, I guess, after the last one, and that came back with some really interesting comments, and everything was really positive, and we're constantly getting good feedback around the information that's provided in the speakers. So that's a really good thing, and another great way that we can engage with our businesses, both in economic development and tourism areas. I think we're all familiar with Go Before You Go. Lots of comments that come back in relation to that, but if they're talking about it, then that's fantastic. Sustainable tourism is part of our portfolio as well. The Go Before You Go is a classic campaign that kind of tries to provide those messages in a very clear way, although some people have questioned that sometimes. But the flow maps, again, as I mentioned, we're putting sustainability messages on the back of our maps and the back of our pamphlets and information that goes through our visitor centres. We are encouraging the sustainability scorecard to be undertaken by businesses, and I've just mentioned a few there that have, actually been through that process already. Our relationship with Ecotourism Australia has us with a page on the Green Destinations website as well. So that's accessed by anyone who goes to the Ecotourism Australia website and the Green Destinations website, and that's an international website. And as I mentioned before, the locally made product sits at around the 85% in our visitor centres. Inclusive tourism, that's a fluid document, so we're constantly updating that as we need to when there are infrastructure changes or informational program changes. So that's something that is an ongoing updated to that document. We've talked about the tourism branding, and even when you have a look at the Go Before You Go picture, there's subtle things in that which relate to our branding in terms of colours, fonts and things like that. So we are kind of bringing it into everything that we possibly can, and that's our flags, website, collateral, signage, etc. Mention the tourism side of things with our release of the next hero campaign and the reels and our photo library. So we've also just done some additional photography on specifically with business, and that will lead into one of the projects that I'll talk about in just a moment. Speaking of which, current projects. And this is the one that we're pretty excited about. It's just about to launch. It's gone to print. So we should have this in a hot little hand very, very soon. And this was a collaboration with the Three Chambers and Never Never Studio, which is a local designer here in Bellingen. what you can see on the screen is just the front page, but it's basically a visitor guide that's specifically targeted to, I guess, the play and the eat component of our website. Because they'll be here, they've already booked their accommodation or they do that in advance. This is really about what can I do when I'm here, where can I go, what can I eat, that type of thing. The criteria for businesses to be involved in this guide is they had to have an ATDW profile and they have to be on our website. So that's how the determination was made in order to bring them into this process.
Good plan,
so
good plan.
Yeah, and it encourages them to kind of, you know, get that profile done and we can showcase and support them further. And this is a good example, I guess, of one of the projects and things that we can do to support businesses that do engage with council. So there's 77 businesses across the Shire, so it's right from the seaboard to the plateau, that will be featured on this. And this is a bit of a snapshot of what that will look like. It will fold as well. So while it doesn't look like, I'm pointing at the screen, which is probably not helping everyone, but when you can see on the left of the picture where it's got that acknowledgement of country and then there's a picture down the bottom, if you actually turn the acknowledgement upside down, so when you fold it, it folds into about that sort of pocket size. So big enough that you can open it and it's not too big, but small enough that you could pop in your handbag or a backpack or something like that. In terms of distribution, so that will be sent out to other shires. So we regularly get asked for information from the likes of Port Macquarie, Armidale, Coffs, Woolgoolga, sometimes up in Tweed. We've actually supplied information to Tweed before, and we've also occasionally had requests from some areas in Sydney. So we certainly distribute where we can with the information that we've got that's appropriate to send. So this is a bit of a test pilot, I guess, in terms of supporting businesses, but also providing information to visitors and potentially locals that may be new to the area as well. And then from there, we'll work with the chambers moving forward to basically hand the baby to them. And then they will kind of lead this project moving forward. And we've actually had some interest from local businesses in terms of providing support to the chamber for that already, and we're not even there yet. So haven't even officially launched yet. So that's a really good news story as well.
So Max, have the chambers seen that sort of prototype or? Yeah,
so we had a number of meetings with the chambers prior. The Bellingen chamber has kind of been the lead chamber on this, but Rod's certainly been across it from Yeronga side of things. Ben has seen it, but he was unable to participate in a lot of the meetings. But yes, they're aware. They haven't seen the final product, but they're certainly across what that looks like.
Great.
Yeah. So one of the other projects that we're working on at the moment is with a group called Life Unhurried. So they're about the conscious traveller. So they're about sustainability, going slow and slow travel. We liked them when we were investigating the different agencies to work with because of their alignment with our eco certification and also just generally our destinations values as well. So we've been working on a two-month campaign with them. So they're doing a bit of the legwork behind the scenes at the moment. So they're going to create things like itineraries. So they're going in and doing their own investigations right across the Shire. From that, they'll write blogs about where they've been and where they visited and so forth. They'll do a whole social media campaign. They're also going to create another hero film for us and a bunch of reels. And on their website as well, they have a dedicated landing page that talks to eco certification and eco certified destinations. So we will have a place on their website for that as well. So that's really exciting. And the other project in the economic development space is around the digital connectivity plan. So we're working really closely with NBN and Telstra to develop this plan. And this is really around, well, the focus areas are really advocacy. What is the existing infrastructure that exists and what are the upgrades and the new developments that are happening? How do we support businesses through this type of technology? what does digital inclusion look like? So they actually have a criteria, just like we talk about social inclusion, they have a digital inclusion criteria as well. And so some of that is things like, do you actually have access, and what does that access look like? And then other things are, how much do you know and how good are you at accessing technology? So there's a whole sort of criteria so that's where the digital inclusion comes into it. It's also around governance and community services. How do we offer services through digital connectivity? And then there's the emergency management and response side of things as well. So what do Telstra and NBN do when there's a flood or a fire, and those types of things. So we're almost at final draft. It's been a long time, a long development because of the information and the stakeholders that we're trying to engage with, but we're very close, and we're excited that will hopefully come out over the next sort of month or two, and by the end of this financial year, which is really great. The town entry statements. So we did have a workshop in November, and there is another workshop coming up as well, just to step through some of the key elements around the entry statements. So this is really just about.
Excuse me, Maxine. Does entry statements mean entry signs?
Yeah, so we don't like to call them signs, because people then just think of the old traditional, red and the green and white signs and things like that.
I'll probably keep calling them signs. We
won't hold it against you, Councillor.
Thank you.
So for the purposes of this, we just refer to them as town entry statements. So, as I mentioned, we've discussed this at the previous workshop, but the primary entry points for the signage, so there'll be 2 in Dorrigo, 2 Bellingen, 2 Urunga, and then 2 in Marsden and Repton. The town entry statements have been informed by the signage strategy and the work that was done with the branding strategy as well. And as outlined on the slide as well, it's really about how do we represent the Bellingen Shire, and what do these statements look like that really creates an identity. And we want that obviously to be a positive experience and also relate to who we are and what our values are as a community. And it is a bit about that pride and respect. We want to have a good face on when people first come into the Shire, whether that's in Urunga or through Dorrigo. And it's also about consistency. So while the work that we're doing with the Indigenous artists may look slightly different, the actual concepts and the look and the feel of it has consistency right across the Shire. So that's the intention for that. And then hopefully this sets the benchmark for future signage as well.
That's fantastic. It's great project. Great project.
Yeah, so it's quite doesn't probably sound like it's a big project, but it's been quite involved because of the technical services teams and the different partners that we have to look to working with, who we're working with. And the 2 key stages, I guess, is really that design, and then that's really that delivery side as well. So we'll talk to what the timeframes look like in a moment. But I
can see the Indigenous community.
Yep.
So what's the latest? I'd asked Todd at one stage about the spelling of Urunga. It might be apply elsewhere too, but it caught my eye, Urunga, that in one of the early examples it was written different to how the Urunga Aboriginal Corporation spells it.
Yep, you've just gone on to mute, Councillor Keith. We can't hear you.
Sorry, you're probably about to cover this, but I just wanted to double check this, not only the official spelling, but that people like Francis Witt and Dean Kelly are across it.
Yeah.
So that hopefully there's agreement, everybody agrees in how to spell Urunga or any other name. But even if there's not agreement, at least it's not a surprise when it goes up. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, sure. So just working through the Indigenous artwork, we did do a lot of work with Murbai Language School. We've also engaged with NADA, who is the National Aboriginal Design Agency. So they're the lead agency who are engaging with our Indigenous stakeholders as part of this project. So we've worked with them. We've also worked with various elders, and we've also worked with the Yak and different other groups as well. So
So just to be explicit, have they been across the potential spelling of town names?
Absolutely.
The local people, I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
So
thank you.
I'll flick to the next one, which might just help clarify that. So as I said, we've engaged with Merbay Language Centre, the YAC, Winona Headland Aboriginal Corporation. We've worked with NADA, and NADA have also been working with the elders in relation to naming and making sure that that's correct. Also in terms of dual naming, so where we might have Yurunga in the Western English language, then that's the Indigenous language as well, and making sure that that's been considered and is appropriate as well. So all of that's actually been ticked off, and we've had confirmation and agreement from those groups in terms of both language and also from the dual naming side of things.
Right.
So just flipping quickly back to this, we've been working with those local Indigenous artists to commission artwork that will be incorporated into the signage, and Honey Cairns, Brenton Nugnan and Lisa Kelly are those 3 artists that are currently working with. We had initial meetings, and actually last Friday we had the first meeting with all 3 artists, elders, Auntie Frances Witt, Uncle Cecil Briggs and also Auntie Anne Edwards, and they worked with, the elders were working with the 3 artists. So Honey is actually working with Uncle Cecil. Brenton is working with, I'm just trying to think, he's working with Auntie Anne, I believe it is, and Lisa's working with Auntie Frances Witt, because Honey will be doing the artwork for Dorigo, Brenton is doing the artwork for Bellingen, and Lisa Kelly will be doing the artwork for Yurunga. So there'll be another meeting coming up on the 17th of April as well, and hopefully at that stage they'll be able to finalise the artworks and the stories to form part of that artwork that will go into the signs, and that will be with guidance and endorsement from the elders who've been involved.
Can I just say, Max, sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
What a great privilege it was to be a part of that panel alongside Frances and Auntie Anne as well in choosing the artists. There was a great selection of artists who had put in an expression of interest, but it really came down very strongly from the aunties involved that the artists that were chosen were best chosen because they're not only are they Gumbaynggirr artists, but they are Gumbaynggirr artists from this valley. And so I think that's really what informed the final decisions. And yeah, it was just a great privilege to be part of that. And not only did those aunties express enthusiasm for the inclusion of Gumbaynggirr art on these statement pieces, but really for the whole process. And they saw it as a way of healing within the Gumbaynggirr community itself, and also obviously with the wider community. So yeah, just thought I'd share that with everyone.
Yeah, and we had some great moments. I wasn't there, but Micah was telling me about it last Friday, and she took some photos with their permission too, and you can just see the joy in their faces as they're working together, and they were laughing and just really engaged, not just with the process, but with each other. And that was a really lovely thing to see. So yeah, it's a really positive thing, I think, and hopefully it helps moving forward when we have other projects where we need to engage with our Indigenous community, that this serves as a good experience and something that can foster better relationships moving forward. So yeah, really, really great. I'll quickly run through this. A lot of the work around developing concepts, having workshops, doing reports, engaging our Indigenous artists, working through the Indigenous language side of things, working with our technical service team, and obviously consulting with the agencies involved around site locations and traffic issues in particular. That's all happened basically from end of last year and into this year. So now we are continuing to consult and engage with relevant community members and groups, working still with NADA around finalising the Indigenous artwork. And then we'll move into that final phase, which is really fabrication and installation. So the detailed design process is kicking off around the putting out an RFQ, so request for quote, to bring for that final detailed design process, and including the architectural design. So what does the structure of that actually look like, and what do we need to do to make that work? Fabrication and then installation. So we're getting close, which is really exciting. Just in relation, I know there was some commentary and conversations around the community signage. So we are currently exploring, particularly with the excuse me, key stakeholders that have existing signage in that community board. So we're working with them and having conversations with them around that. We have met with the Lions Club and also the 3 markets and had conversations with them to really just discuss why the signage, why there, does this work for you, what's the intent of the signage, and what do we think will work best moving forward, and really trying to understand that. So the 3 markets in particular actually don't think that's the greatest location, because for them it's around advertising what they're doing and the markets are on and things like that. The Lions Club took a bit of a different view, because the purpose for them, it's more about awareness of who they are and how they serve community, as opposed to advertising for an event or for the markets and things like that. The Lions have actually made some suggestions about what they think should happen, including, I guess, a services sign that does help promote some of those local community organisations. All in all, they did agree that we do need a bit of a process, and that guidelines are important when it comes to signage and how that works. And then particularly with events as well, and event signage, what's the best places and avenues for that to work, both for those events but also for council and community. So we're having ongoing discussions with each of those groups to ascertain what might be a good outcome and how we can support what they want to do, as well as, you know, make sure that there's interest from community as well. And the markets in particular talk about Connell Park as being somewhere which is a good space to promote, because you're not just getting traffic, but you're getting foot traffic as well. So somewhere that's quite close to town, which does get eyes on what they're wanting to advertise. So as I said, ongoing discussions with each of those groups, and hopefully we'll be able to find some really positive outcomes.
Well done for investing the time. It's very respectful to. And it must take a lot of time, but it's a really good step. Well done.
Yeah, thank you. So moving into the community development and planning side of it. So this is really Addie and Louise, who you're all quite aware of. So community planning officer is Adeline, and a lot of her key, I guess, roles within council are around that community outreach and events, particularly the awareness day events as well. She is also responsible for the oversight and delivery of the Disability Inclusion Action Plan, and interagency groups and Section 355 committees. So as we have 19 committees currently and approximately 150 volunteers. So it's a big job for Addie to be engaging with all those people at any given time. And Louise, our Community Development Officer. So again, community outreach, events and information, awareness days, and works really closely with Addie on a number of those facets. She also facilitates our community grants program that you're all aware of. She had responsibility for the community awards this year as well. And again, interagency group meetings along with Addie. And her key, I guess, plan or strategy is the Ageing Well strategy. So that's the key sort of deliverable for Louise. And these are just some of the things that they've been working on this financial year so far. and there's a couple of other things in play as well. So community awards, mobility map, seniors festival grants, E&J Cooper. The MLAC key has been a really positive thing that council has decided to do from last year. So previously, anyone requiring an MLAC key, which is the key basically gives access to disability toilets right across the state, and I believe they're a national key actually. They previously had to go into COFs, which was challenging for some. And so Addie had the insight to try and make that available through council, which we have done, and it's just that cost recovery. We don't make anything out of it. It's really for the benefit of community, and that's been something that's been taken up quite well over the last little while that's been in place. The other thing too with community is we send out community updates and information, and it says to over 400 contacts. I think it's closer to about 500. And that's really how do we keep community involved and provide information, grant funding, all those sorts of things. And that's something that Louise does on a fairly regular basis as well. And one of the current projects that we're looking at, which again has come out of the DUP and also Ageing Well, is we're looking at a bench seat for Dangar for the walk there, and that's something that we're hoping to implement in the coming weeks, which is really exciting as well. Again, touched on this already around committees, but some of the key projects is that we're doing a committee review this financial year. So as mentioned, we've got 19 committees and approximately 150 volunteers, and they all work differently. So that comes with its challenges. And so we're just we're undertaking a review to really ascertain how each of those committees work, who does what does council support them with, what do they do on their own, and try to bring, I guess, where possible, a bit more consistency across how they manage. Now, that's not going to work for every committee because there are some that are very specific or manage a very specific facility or site, so it may not be, you know, one size fits all, as they say. So we will certainly work with those committees to determine what that looks like. Addie has also got lead on the volunteer policy and process. So we do have one, but she's just undertaking a bit of a review as well. And we're working really closely with Sam's team, governance, our safety team as well, and the library and the mem hall, given that there are volunteers that sit in other parts of the business, including our visitor centres as well. So the grants, next financial year grants round is opening on the 9th. So that's exciting. And the other key thing is the access and inclusion reference group expressions of interest are also open. So if you know anyone that might be interested in engaging as part of that reference group, please refer them to us and we will certainly have that conversation. And that's, again, a key action that's come out of the Ageing Well strategy. So that's another really exciting part of it. Libraries. Well, we know and the community tells us that we love our libraries. So that's a really positive thing. And I guess this is really just to give a bit of an overview on things like the membership and some of the activities and events and things that happen. So while we have our agreement with Clarence, I'd suggest that our membership tends to boost their numbers up a little bit because we do actually have some really great membership across our shire. So as you can see on the slide, 55% on the plateau, 68% of the Bellingen Valley is a member of the library, and 40% of the seaboard. If we take Milestone out of that and just look at Yeronga actually has 61% membership at the library. And I think that's
unbelievable.
Yeah, so really good numbers.
I've never seen or thought about that before. That's amazing.
Yeah, when you think 68% of the Bellingen Valley, that's pretty.
What drives? What's the number?
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, what's the number one driver of that? Like to have a service that has more than half the population.
Yeah, good question. I would say anecdotally, without having the data and the evidence in front of me, but I would suggest that, you know, well, if you look at the slide, which talks about the different activities and the different events, you know, the picture in the middle is a classic example of how we can bring community together. You know, that's a picture of Storytime up in Dorrigo, and Storytime is a great example. As noted in the slide, you know, Dorrigo had 121 participants in February to Storytime, which is massive. Like when we look at, say, Yeronga and Bellingen, they don't even get close to that number in terms of participants. And when we think, often we think about Dorrigo as an ageing population compared to perhaps Bellingen and even potentially Yeronga. So we are seeing a lot of really young families move into Dorrigo. And that's a great place for young mums and dads and grandparents to actually come together and not just give their young ones something to do, but to socialise themselves. Jade was telling me a story the other day, or one of the staff was telling me a story the other day, that a number of the mums that actually go to Storytime, before that they do a yoga class, they go to Storytime and then they go for coffee afterwards. So it's creating opportunity for people to connect, particularly if they're fairly new to the area, which I think is a really good thing. And I think it is those different activities as well. One of the things that I've had conversations with the Youth Hub about is young people. It's actually an alternative space for young people to go that isn't the Youth Hub. I think for some young people, based on the conversation that we were having, is the Youth Hub isn't a good fit for some young people, but the library is a safe space that they can go to. They can still participate in activities. You know, that they're in a safe space. They can still hang out with their peers, but it's not necessarily the Youth Hub. And so I think having those different opportunities invites different parts of the community, and provides services that isn't just about loaning a book. You know what I mean? So, and they have homeschool visits, they have awareness days, they do author talks, they have write-in sessions. So if you're a writer that you're trying to write a book, you can come in and have a session with like-minded authors or people that like to creatively write and spend time and connect as well. So I think it's just those, you know, out-of-the-box opportunities and services that are provided through that one space. So really positive story, I think. And on that, the April School Holidays activities and Youth Week activities are happening in the library shortly. And the readers and writers are looking to do an author talk. And Jade actually mentioned to me just a couple of days ago that the organisers for readers and writers actually want to extend events and activities and work more closely with libraries and how they can provide some additional events as well. So I think that's a really positive story as well. Customer and business services. I'll just touch on this one quickly as well. So that's, most people will see people that sit out the front and on the phones and things like that. Most people see that as customer and business services. So, but they are an internal and an external customer service. They deal with more than 40 areas of the business, and I've outlined a few of those there. So if someone comes in and they want a sewer diagram because they need to do some work, or they're shifting their house around or whatever, they can come and request that information. They are the first port of call for things like companion animals and registrations and things like that. If they want to book a street stall, if they want to provide information so they can access the pensioner concession, service requests, sales transfers, if a property sells, and they do part of that process as well. And the list goes on. So really important service, both for council and community. In terms of phones, so they take or receive between 60 and 65 calls a day. When we had the floods, that went up to between, I think it was 80 and 125 calls, so double the number of calls were coming in during that flood period. And given everyone had to work from home, that was an extra challenge, I guess, that they had to try to adapt to in terms of serving our community as best they can while they're working from home and taking calls and things from home.
Just on that, Max, councillors, we recently updated our phone system where it's now actually run through Teams. So our phone calls now actually get run through our Microsoft Teams, which does allow for anyone to take a council phone call wherever they've got Teams access. So it's one of the benefits that we do have with that if we do require people to work at home, that the person that's taking the calls for council can actually be working anywhere So it is certainly a positive, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Mark. And the team also manage council's inbox. So the council@bellingen.nsw email address is what goes into council's inbox. And as you can see, just in the last 3 months, they've seen close to 3,000 emails be received into that inbox and then actioned depending on what was required. They also have an customer and business services inbox as well, which is an internal inbox. So requests that might come from our development and compliance team, for example, go to that inbox and they probably get probably 50 to 70 in that inbox a week as well. And so there's a lot of information that's turning over through that team on any given day of the week. The team also manage our records, and they also are part of the GIPA request process as well. So GIPAs can come in formally or informally, depending on what that request is, the level of work that's required, etc. And so our team are working closely with the governance team to manage those requests as well. In terms of projects, so the customer and business services team manage cemeteries as well. And so we've got a cemeteries project at the moment, which is through Chronicle, and I love their email address because it's chronicle.rip, and I think that's hilarious. But they're basically a cemetery management system, and the system will actually be a publicly facing and searchable system. So someone can actually go onto the website once it's established and actually look up a plot or a gravesite, or get information about what's available in terms of plots and things like that. So the work that's being done currently is they've started mapping. They've done 2 of our cemeteries at the moment, and what they're doing is they're doing some drone mapping, and then there's physically someone on site taking photos of every grave and doing a geolocation of every single grave, and all that mapping will come together with the information that we've provided out of our systems, and then they will incorporate that into the Chronicle system, which will then be, as I mentioned, a publicly accessible website, which is really exciting. And it was a really interesting process that one of our customer and business services team has gone through over the last sort of couple of months in trying to really find what our cemetery records are up to, because we've got a number of unmarked graves, we've got a number of unnamed graves, we've got some Indigenous graves and so forth. So we've been working with the Historical Society, the Keith Logues of the world, our paper records, our big Bible. I don't know if anyone's ever seen it, but it's literally a big book that goes back to, I think, the 1800s when council started and we took on cemeteries. So we call it the Bible. And then trying to match that up with our information that we have in our systems. So it's been quite a process just to clean that data and really get that all in a position where we can then use that along with the mapping information to then create this website that provides all this information.
How did the key person, your staff member, go solving the puzzle of the unnamed graves, unmarked graves? What percentage have then been solved?
There's still a few. I will say that there is still a few,
yeah.
But it's interesting when you start this process what actually comes out of the woodwork. And sometimes it's just been a random conversation. Oh no, that's so-and-so's grave. Oh, which was in this time, but this, and
real detective work, isn't it?
It really, really is. And I mean, she's fascinated because, she's found out all this information that she's never known, but it's actually informing then where different plots are. And, because we've had instances where we thought it was a free, there wasn't anyone actually in that plot. And when they go to dig the plot, they find out that someone is in that plot, but then it was never named or never marked, and, things like that as they sort of do their searches to see what's in the ground and whatnot. So it's been quite a valuable process as well for us to really understand what's happening, because a lot of the information was previously kept by the churches. And so how well that was kept, we don't really know, and what documentation that might have got lost in the process of transferring to council and things like that. So it has been a really deep dive, I guess, into understanding what is actually in our in our cemeteries. So yeah, it's been a great
process.
process.
It's the one part of your team I've never dealt with, and I don't plan to personally deal with anytime soon, Maxine.
Good. Just keep your family informed, hey, as to what your wants and needs are. But it's interesting because a lot of requests that we do get are about family plots, and we take reservations for what might happen down the track. And often they will not just book one plot for themselves, but they'll book 2 or 3 or 4 for their family. So yeah, it's been an interesting discovery, shall we say. But that's something that's going to be really great. Dorgo Support Centre. These guys I have total respect for, and can't appreciate the work that the team does in this space, because it meets such a need in our community. And I think it's just such a positive story for that community in particular. So currently the Dorgo Support Centre does support and connect with over 200 seniors. And that's, as I said, in the plateau and those surrounding rural areas. So we originally had about 100 registered under the Commonwealth Home Support Program, and we'll touch on that just a little bit. So the Commonwealth Home Support Program is the baseline service. So it's basic needs of people in the community, elders, older persons in the community, seniors in the community. But we do work and we provide services through contractors. As I mentioned before, we've got 16 contractors, and they range from registered nurses, OTs, qualified support workers, cleaners, domestic assistance workers, and the like. The services that are provided through the Dorgo Support Centre include regular social outings and community events, and it's really about that social connection and creating wellbeing for seniors on the plateau. They do fortnightly trips off the mountain, so that could be to Woolgoolga, it could be into Coffs or Sawtell, or somewhere that's not too far away that they can do in a day trip. And they also do extended trips as well once a year, and that's seniors can participate in that as they so choose. So some of the trips have been Floreal or gone to the Blue Mountains. I think they did one to Toowoomba as well while the Garden Festival was on up there, and lots of other places. The monthly newsletter, I will say, if it's late, seniors will tell you the very next day that they haven't received their newsletter, which is good because it means they're engaged and they're really excited to receive that information. So that goes out as well to over 200 seniors every month. And that actually goes out with a schedule. So they put out a monthly calendar of all the events and activities that take place. So that goes out as part of that newsletter as well. The support centre also hosts fortnightly lunches at Hickory House, so they prepare and serve all the meals as well, and seniors need to book into that. And what's really exciting is for the first time, the support centre has been asked to actually lay a wreath on Anzac Day, and I think that's just recognition of the value within the community. They're seen as quite valued in the community as well. So just in terms of the business model, I'm not sure of the level of awareness of councillors in terms of how it actually runs. So I spoke very quickly about the Commonwealth Home Support Program, and that's the base level care. That is actually federally funded, but it's subsidised, so it's not fully funded. So as part of that program and the framework that's set out by the federal government, there is a requirement from clients to contribute to pay for that service. And the services, as I've outlined there, it's really that gardening, cleaning, any domestic assistance or support that they might require, and then it's that social support. So whether as a group they come together and get support, or on a one-on-one basis. So we might have a support worker go out and spend time with a particular client. So that might be classified as individual support. We are in the throes of new aged care reforms, which is an interesting beast at the moment. And I feel like we get a letter every week telling us that something's happening or about to change. That is creating a lot of work in this space. Potentially not so much for us, because Alex has done an amazing job to get clients registered with My Aged Care, or just have an aged care number in the system, which is really what Department of Health and Aged Care are asking of all service providers by 30th of June. So to give you an example, if we didn't have our CHSP clients registered, we would need to get 83 registered by 30th of June. And that is such a process. So thankfully, you know, Alex has had the foresight to make sure that we have actually got those things in place, which will help us transition into the new reforms. And in 2027, when the actual CHSP funding ceases, we'll be in a much, much better place as well. So what they're basically saying is after 2027, all clients must be on a home care package. So there's a lot of work that we're doing at the moment to try and transition CHSP clients to a healthcare or home care package. And we've actually done 16 clients at the moment through that process. To actually be assigned a home care package is the easy part. To actually access the funding that comes with that home care package can take up to 12 months. So it's not something that happens overnight. And so there is work and information and support that has to be given to clients to really understand what that process means and how that process works, and even supporting them to the point where they might be currently on a CHSP and only getting base level care, but they require a higher level of care. That can't come until they're actually on a home care package. So there is a lot of work that the Dorrigo Support Centre does with those particular clients. And at the moment, when we're working with clients, we're starting at the higher needs clients and working our way down to the lower needs clients to ensure that when these reforms go through and when the actual CHSP program and funding ceases in 2027, everyone's in the right place and receiving the right level of home care package, and so that care can continue. So it's a really, really important program and process that the Dorrigo Support Centre are doing with basically 1.5 staff at the moment. So it's a big job for that team. So in terms of current and future business models, because we know that CHSP funding is ceasing in 2027, when Kathy was sitting in this space for a period of time, she had the foresight to look at brokerage. And so we currently have 3 agreements under a brokerage arrangement, which is with New South Wales Health Trilogy and Harbour at Home, which used to be HSS, and they've changed their name. So what that basically means is because the state government don't have any services or agencies to provide care in our shire and in particularly on the plateau, the Dorrigo Support Centre steps in to provide that service, and then we charge those costs back to New South Wales Health Trilogy and Harbour at Home. So that's actually a really good business model because it means we can actually charge at an appropriate rate that helps support not just the delivery of those services, but also the ongoing running of the service of the Dorrigo Support Centre. So that's a really, really positive thing. We have had requests from other agencies to go into brokerage agreements. We're not there yet, and we want to just give it time to really get what we've got in place in a really workable space. And given all the new aged care reforms that are coming in, that needs to be our focus right now as well, and working with those clients. So just going back to client contributions, as part of the CHSP program, it is a requirement under their framework, as I mentioned, that clients do pay a contribution to that service. So at the moment, the CHSP only subsidises $15. And we haven't, while they've announced additional funding that's coming, we have no idea what that looks like and whether that's actually going to change the level of subsidy or not. And that $15 hasn't actually changed since it was implemented in 2016. So what that means is it doesn't actually meet the cost to provide services to those clients. And so Council is currently picking up the gap between what the contribution is and also what CHSP charge. So what we're actually doing at the moment is we are looking at increasing the client contribution from $15 to $25, and that will just cover baseline cost for the actual contractor. It still leaves a gap in terms of the administration and things like that Dorrigo Support Centre will actually need to continue to undertake, but it does actually recover the costs for the actual contractors that go out. The good thing and the good story about that is that we are transitioning those clients into the brokerages where we can charge a higher fee, which does create, I guess, revenue that then reduces that gap. So the more clients that we start to transition into the brokerage or into home care packages, which sit under a brokerage agreement, then the cost becomes less for the Dorrigo Support Centre. And we're hoping to become, I guess, cost neutral or better in the next 12 months from a business model point of view, which is, I think, a really positive thing. So in terms of that increase as well, the actual CHSP framework does have hardship principles within the framework. And Alex, through her work one-on-one with clients, has identified those that she believes may fall into that hardship situation, and we are having conversations as we need to and as appropriate with various clients to ensure that they don't miss out on provision of service, and we can still maintain a level of service to them to support their aged care needs and making sure that they do live safely at home. Any questions on that one? It's a lot to take in, I'm sorry. So try and give you the nuts and bolts of it without sort of getting too much into the detail, but just to give you an overview, but that's the current working model for Dorrigo Support Centre. Last but certainly not least, our amazing Bellingen Memorial Hall. So we're nearly 2 years post redevelopment, which is crazy to think that that was 2 years ago. And so a lot of the work that's happening, that Phil's doing at the moment outside, trying to deliver all these amazing events and activities and work with community and event organisers to do that. He's got a real focus on the ongoing development around our processes and our administration tasks and systems. Excuse me. Because by building capacity through our processes, by building capacity through our volunteers, and there's different systems that we use, and that creates better efficiencies. So that's a real important piece of work that Phil continues to work through. And it's a really, really positive thing. So in terms of activities, there's a whole list there as part of the presentation, which, you know, ranges from music to comedy. When we say sport, that's things like karate classes, yoga classes and things like that, to education and information sessions with business workshops. There's dance, wellbeing and the like, which is a really, really great thing. And all of those things in the last month have taken place at the Memorial Hall. I think March has been the biggest month since we reopened nearly 2 years ago for events and activities, which has been crazy. So in terms of how is it tracking? So just throwing up a bunch of stats and information just around how it actually is tracking compared to 23-24 years. So if we look at Q1 to Q3 from the 23-24 year, the hall hosted 301 activities. For the same period this financial year, we've hosted 393 activities already. In 23-24, the full financial year, that we had 426 bookings, so events and activities that took place. This year, we're on track to actually facilitate 523 activities at the hall. And so that's a 19% increase on that. Just in the Q3 of 2025, we've seen an increase of 116% based on the Q3 quarter last year in terms of revenue from events and hire. And year to date 2025 versus the same period for 2024, it's up by 40% overall. We do have community booking rates, not-for-profit booking rates, and also our commercial booking rates. And on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see that community is absolutely still the ones that are really engaged with the hall and running a lot of those community events and activities. So of the 393 so far, 262 of those have been community bookings, which is 67% of all of our activities. Not-for-profit, again, really, really high, and we're actually starting to see a shift. So we're actually getting more not-for-profit bookings at the hall, which is, I guess, aligned to that increase in the revenue as well. And we've also, obviously, the commercial bookings are our highest yield bookings, even though they may be our smallest at the moment. But they're the ones that certainly deliver from a financial point of view. So in terms of subsidising community and not-for-profit versus commercial, so the subsidy from council is 90%, which is huge commitment from council in terms of community and really wanting to see them use that facility and run all those events that are really targeted to our community. And in terms of the studio, if we look at 7 days a week and what time is available across that 7 days in the week, the studio is booked for 95% of that time on average, which again is a huge stat in terms of its use, given that the hall used to just be that one big room, to now see the extension valued and being used so frequently is it's really, really amazing. So it's a really all-round great news story to see community are getting what they need, but we're also seeing lots of other activities from not-for-profits and that commercial sector as well. And I think one more slide, and I think we're just about there. So these are just some upcoming events that are being programmed through Phil. So we've got the David Heathcote Legacy, which is going to be an amazing event coming up this weekend. So if you haven't got tickets, please get them. Encourage everyone to attend. It's going to be a really, really special event. We've got some great young artists who will be playing, and also Mei Lim, who is internationally trained as well, but she's locally lives in Repton. She's going to be performing as well. David will be in attendance, which is looking to be a really, really amazing thing. And Annie Phelan is also going to be a huge part of this. I think most of you know Annie through BYO. Film Festival kicks off at the end of April, which is sure to be great. There's also a free session to make sure that community who may not, wish to attend or may struggle to purchase a ticket, we do have a free screening session as well to try and encourage as many people along to that. And work is currently underway as well to bring back jazz to the Bellingen Shire. So that's another event that's coming up in August this year. And that is us.
Any questions, councillors? No, if not, it's been some questions as we went through. Thank you very much for that presentation, Max.
No worries.
It's amazing all the areas that you
Unbelievable, Max. Really good.
Thank you.
Incredible.
So, councillors, we'll finish off on that presentation and then we'll move into sustainable environment and waste in just a moment. Thank you all.